playing with Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt, and Price of Progress, kind of all the staples you'd expect. So we're gonna see one fairly stock deck and one not so stock deck. Joe actually beat me a couple months ago in a local Legacy tournament with some sort of life deck, but I believe this either predates the Commander product or predates this piece of technology. So
absolutely. Now, it says life here on our list off to the side. I don't actually see a infinite life engine in here. I'm trying to see if I can find one.
Yeah, I mean that's often a label given to a deck that sort of flips its deck over with an Encore Illusionist.
Yeah.
Or yeah, some sort of Encore trigger. But yeah.
And we see Tropical into Aether Vial versus a Delver.
It's closer to death than life. You like that one, Dane? Yeah, I got a chuckle out of Dane.
Favorite split card.
Turn 2, Fishy Ponder.
And this is the kind of opening that's, I mean, it really demonstrates how important it is to know the format, because this is a fairly unconventional opening, like Tropical into Vial into Ponder. And
what are you playing against?
Right. If you are actually in the loop about Legacy, you probably know at least the general infrastructure of what the deck is going to be like. For me, I was sort of, I mean, was this some sort of tempo deck that had Vial, etc., etc.? Then I just got killed out of nowhere. So the information is super important, and that's a huge edge with some of these road decks, is like just your opponent putting a wrong read on you, and especially since a lot of Legacy decks only have like a very finite number of reactive cards in them, just guessing wrong on what's actually going on can easily spell your doom, much more easily than in Standard.
I mean, this is another reason why I feel there's a huge skill advantage in Legacy, which makes Legacy, as far as I can tell, one of the most skill-intensive formats that might have ever existed, I think.
Yeah.
We get a draw from the Ponder after a shuffle. Looks like a Brainstorm. Is he looking for a land there? Does he not have a second land?
He did not have a second land.
Wow.
All right, so we're going to Brainstorm here with the trigger on the stack to get the Delver flipped. It is hard for a format to not be skill-intensive when it features Brainstorm and shuffling. That alone is just a lot of decision making, a lot of different paths you can take.
Brainstorm in response to the Delver. So you've been playing Delver of Secrets.
Yep.
What do you do logistically with your Delver? Do you keep it in a sleeve and then take it out and put it back in? Do you use the official proxy cards and then have them off to the side?
I'd rather get DQ'd than use a checklist card. I take them out of the sleeve and flip them over in the sleeve.
Okay. I take them out of the sleeve and then flip them over outside the sleeve.
I think that's totally fine. I just, I'm sort of, I got some amount of like OCD about the way that my board is set up, and if I have something outside of the sleeve and everything else inside the sleeve, it just bothers me. So
fair. A second Delver joining the already flipped Delver. Delver Brainstorm, such a potent combination of cards.
And I mentioned this earlier. I've been working a little bit, kind of in my free time or whatever, on the red-blue burn deck. And a card that I've been really liking a lot in the deck is Predict, because it plays well with Delver and Goblin Guide, Brainstorm, Ponder, and Submerge in the sideboard if you want it. So it's pretty easy to engineer as just 2-mana draw 2. And Goblin Guide Predict is just the sweetest.
That's awesome. We played some games, and Goblin Guide Predict, I don't know if that came up, but certainly other things came up.
Yeah.
Right now, 2 counters on the Aether Vial. Brainstorm from Joe Lossett, and he drops a second Aether Vial.
And this is and George, again, is still in the position of, if he doesn't actually know what's really what's going on, if he's not too up to speed on some of the the less commonly seen decks in Legacy, he still doesn't really have a ton of information about what's going on right now.
And important to note, George's ability to interact with the combo is Burn. And Burn not particularly good against a Cephalid Illusionist.
Yeah, I mean, you can break up an Encore if you lead with that.
Signed up for Commander Pod number 2. We are ready to go. Please report back to the scorekeeper station. Once again, Commander Pod number 2. Please report to the scorekeeper station.
Also, Joe's deck is pretty cool because it features 2 cards normally not seen in the same deck list: Underground Sea and Savannah. Very rarely appears in the same deck.
Brainstorm in response to the trigger.
Yep. Reveals another Brainstorm.
Very interesting. Joe Lossett's list. Main deck Grand Abolisher. So he can put out a little City of Solitude if he wants.
Yep. It's great, like, because of the way that Vial works, your opponent doesn't really get a chance to respond. Like, you activate it, they let the trigger resolve, and then you put it into play. He can go fetch that up with the Eldamri's Call and just go, activate my Vial, Abolisher's in play, now I can do my thing and I don't have to worry about any reactive elements from you.
His life total is getting down very quick here. He's down to 11, almost dead. Brainstorm. Joe Lossett, no Force of Wills. This deck very commonly has Force of Will, but he has eschewed that in favor of Grand Abolisher and Spell Pierce, as well as Cabal Therapy and a couple of numbers.
Yeah, he has to cobble together so many cards, and he actually doesn't have a ton of blue cards in the deck either, so I'm not too surprised to see Force of Will absent from this deck.
That mana stumble from Joe a little bit ago, I think, is really catching up with him now.
Yep.
On the verge of death, and staring down an opponent that has open mana.
So he's saying go again.
See a fetch here. Scalding Tarn's going away. George Abraham down to a very healthy 18. Life total on that level not important to George for the most part, unless things have gone terribly wrong for Joe, though. It'll all be gone in one swing or not particularly matter.
Right.
You might see an end of turn price progress here just for 2 damage each.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get another chance to cast it, right? So.
Wow, end of turn Brainstorm after the fetch.
Yeah, I think he knew.
Oh, he needed the fetch in order to cast it.
Yeah. So he's debating between. He's thinking about using his Pierce here, and I think he's going to.
Pierce away. End of the turn Bolt goes to 8.
So now Snapcaster or another Bolt is lethal.
Snapcaster, Bolt, Price, all legal.
Yep. Or Goblin Guide, which you just drew.
Ah!
He can vial out a blocker, in theory.
Spell Pierce in hand.
He's just going to continue.
Nope.
Once again, Commander Pod number 2. We're looking
Not
for
an impressive draw from Joe.
Please come back up
Boo.
to the station.
Against
Commander Pod
aggressive
number
decks,
2.
Joe has access to Swords to Plowshares as a good way to try to stem the bleeding.
Yep.
And I think that is his only real way to do it, unless you want to count Kasali Pride Mage just being a 2/2 body.
No,
that's
yeah,
a stretch.
Right. And on the other side of the table, we have some Red Blast. He has access to Vendilion Clicks. He can bring in a 4th copy of Force of Will. So of course, George is sort of feeling his way around potentially, but I would suspect even if you didn't know what Joe was playing, that you'd suspect that Force of Will would be valuable.
I actually like Submerge in George's sideboard. He's seen Aether Vial, which implies that Joe has creatures.
Yep.
And he has seen Forest in the form of Tropical Island. So Submerge, I think, is not unreasonable as a very free creature removal spell.
Submerge also plays very well with Goblin Guide. That's my equivalent of a combo deck, man. So have you ever messed around much with these sort of like Eldamri's Call style decks?
You know, the Eladamri's Call decks that I built, they were never kind of like this. They were more kind of close to, I guess, what we're calling Maverick now, where it would be, but more aggressive than Maverick.
So you're going and getting a Noble Panther or something?
Getting something useful, right? You know, getting some sort of card that like does something.
Yeah.
And having it be like some bullets that are good. And I never had an Eladamri's Call deck that was a deck that I played in a tournament. It just didn't quite get to the point where I wanted to sleeve it up.
Yeah. No, that's another card that I tried making multiple efforts at playing with, but using mana to find creatures is not something that's traditionally been my language. Like, Living Wish was a card that I never understood why it got as much play as it did.
Oh, I loved Living Wish. Oh,
yeah,
man.
that card's not my language. I mean, in combo decks, it's obviously a different animal, but...
Yeah, I mean, I've played Living Wish and Burning Wish a lot. Those cards I love.
Back in the day when I was PTQing, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, and people would have those rock decks with, like, Living Wish to, like, go get a Genesis or a Full Rest Stronghold or all these, like, mopey situational dudes or crappy lands. I was like, there's got to be a better way to use your 2 mana and all your sideboard slots, you know?
You know, actually, I qualified for the Pro Tour with Living Wish Rock.
Yeah.
So, one of the mopey dudes that I would get was Ixlid Jailer, which was an awesome dude to get.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I like about just the wishes is now gone. With M10, I believe it was M10.
Yeah.
They made it so that you can no longer wish for cards that are removed from the game via game effects. The
Right.
exile area is no longer a legal wish area.
Yeah,
But that makes me very sad.
I actually totally agree with that rules change because
Boo.
the idea that someone should have to know that the word collection inside a competitive scenario means your sideboard or cards that have been removed from the game through various effects. Like the word, I mean, I like that they also changed the word removed from game from that to exile.
I have no problem with exile.
Removed from game implies that you no longer have to worry about this card. It has been removed from the game. That is not the case. But I'm a fan of that rules change because it is just, if you try to explain that to like a normal human being, it's like, this is what your collection is. Your guys that have been plowed or your sideboards.
There's an easier way to explain it. Your collection is the cards which you bring to the table when you sit down, like i.e. the cards in your 75. That's your collection.
So why can't I search my deck? So why can't I search my deck?
That's a very good retort, my friend.
We have these debates at work. These are the kind of debates we have all the time. So I'm well versed in this sort of combination of rhetoric and sophistry. That
Wow.
you know. Hopefully, none of my coworkers just heard that.
And I would also say, hopefully, no rhetoricians out there heard that.
Right.
That the equation of rhetoric and sophistry is
same thing.
Oh my God, that is heresy, my friend.
It is the same thing. So, anywho.
And we have George here. He is presenting the threats as far as he can tell, not knowing that Joe was just essentially trying to put together an immediate kill.
Right. I mean, he might know. Maybe he's in the loop.
He could be in the loop. I mean, one of the things when there's a cool deck around,
yeah.
if your ear is to the ground, you can hear about it.
Right. There looks like they're both taking mulligans.
Mulligans, I think, definitely favor George. He has less components to have to put together.
I will say beard and glasses generally means legacy expert. In my experience, they are related.
I usually found that to be more likely to be like a philosophy major.
Sure.
Right?
They're often one and the same.
It's actually funny if you are a college student. If you want to increase the chances of seeing beards in the classroom, go into a philosophy class. The amount of beards in philosophy classes is actually kind of funny.
So I think the mulligan hurts Joe a lot more than George.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. George's deck is just a lot more redundant, and Joe is trying to like cobble A and B together. And those kind of decks generally struggle much more with mulligans unless their search and card drawing is really redundant. And that's not the case here. Joe also has some, like, honestly, some pretty heinous cards to draw. So
there are, I mean, one of the things about a combo like Cephalid Breakfast, man, drawing a Narcomoeba is painful. It's painful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping for a Solifuge to just get vialed out and go to town. that would be.
You know, Giant Solifuge is one of those cards that I've attacked with a lot over the years, and I miss having a deck where I can put it into. I've got my Giant Solifuges at home. They are waterlogged from having been in a flash flood, but I still want to sleeve them up sometime.
Right.
Is that yet another mulligan?
I think they're both going to 5.
Again, I think this is better for George.
Oh yeah, for sure. A Delver and a Daze and a land. And
how about let's be even less what's the phrase?
Greedy?
Ambitious. I was gonna go with ambitious,
Sure.
And just go land Delver.
Yeah.
Right there you go, and you might be able to go the whole way really quick. On the other side of the table, what's your 2-card draw that you can get that's, all that great?
Land Vial.
Land Vial, and then hope that things work out?
Yeah. Lord of Extinction, the Mimeoplasm, Giant Solifuge, Underground Sea, Savannah. Ideal starting 5.
Now, it is worth noting, if it comes down to it, Joe Lossett can cast Lord of Extinction. Now, I have...
Is this like technically he can cast it?
He can technically cast it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you, having played Lord of Extinction in Legacy for quite a while,
yeah.
Lord of Extinction is the one-hit kill. All you've got to do is untap with that guy in play, and I've never had it happen where there wasn't a Tormod script or something involved, where it didn't just kill you in a swing.
Yeah.
Granted, he has very few ways to get that guy out. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome to the Star City Games Live Open Series here in Los Angeles. I'm Adrian Sullivan.
And I'm Patrick Sullivan.
We're watching Round 6, Cephalid Breakfast, being piloted by Joe Lossett here. He is on the play. They've both mulliganed to 5. He's down a game to George Abraham playing Rug Delver. He goes Island, go. George Abraham, Misty Rainforest, go. Misty Rainforest, go.
Tropical, go.
One of my favorite lands of all time, Tropical Island.
So I think George doesn't have a second land. I believe he's fetching now.
Volcanic?
I'm not sure if it's volcanic or tropical, but I think he's fetching to. Sorry, it's only volcanics rather. Sorry. I think he's fetching 2 brainstorm. That's a pretty subtle play that sometimes people miss. Is if you're worried about missing your second land drop, you're generally better, unless your mana is super taxed, to go into your draw step, give yourself 1 more draw, then cast the brainstorm. So you're effectively looking at 4 cards instead of 3. Because often, if that brainstorm doesn't find a second land, you're just dead.
Yeah.
Your fate is sealed.
I definitely have sealed my fate in that way playing a combo deck in the past. Embarrassingly losing to a Thundering Giant from a very casual opponent because my Brainstorm found nothing, and then my next Brainstorm turns later found nothing.
No Brainstorm, just Grim Lavamancer. So he passed on casting it on turn 1.
Third land from Joe Lossett, a Plains. Is that a revised Plains?
Yep.
Old cards.
So George has actually just drawn the Brainstorm.
Those of you who were born in the late 90s, those cards are older than you.
Yeah, that is insane to think about. That is insane to think about, jeez. What happened to the time?
Brainstorm.
And there's a Spell Pierce. Joe is not going to let him dig for that second land. There's a vial from Joe.
And a go. Joe not looking happy there as he leans forward with his frowned three cards.
He's just drawn a Submerge, so we know he did decide to bring those in.
Tropical Island makes the Submerge really good. Still no land, it looks like. Is that a Shattering Spree?
Oh, he brought in Shattering Spree for the vial.
I think you just are not particularly concerned about that. The vial, I don't think, was going to do much work this game.
Yeah, it's hard because there's such a stigma associated with Aether Vial. Like, an unchecked vial means the game's just over. And so it's hard to fight the instinct to bring in those kind of effects. Especially since, like, George's deck is so tight, it's not like he has dead cards, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, that's the equivalent of boarding in a wasteland that stops working.
Right. George still on his one land here. A second Lavamancer.
Look at all those manas. 5 whole manas. Still no real clock for George yet.
He just drew a second land, which is a big draw.
There it is.
Also in a deck with this much of a burn element to it, I'm pretty surprised to see Shattering Spree in the sideboard over Smash the Smithereens.
That is a very good point. Smashed Smithereens would be a card I would have had no hesitation siding in. Shattering Spree I feel a little less excited about.
Right.
Fetch at the end of the turn. Perhaps to cast an end of turn Price of Progress for 4 or effectively 5 by making the fetch happen?
Well, it's not clear he even kept them in because in game 1, Joe only showed Tropical and Basic Island. So he might not even...
I'm just trying to conjecture why he end of turn sack here instead of a draw sack. Snapcaster end of turn, perhaps? Just
yeah, for nothing?
Yeah, I don't like it, but I'm just trying to figure out why EOT.
He might not want to draw a third land.
Fair. Maybe he doesn't want to draw a third land. That could be... Looks like that's it. Just wants to not draw land. Content with 2. In they come. 1 plus 1 is 2.
Commander Pod 2, please come up to the scorekeeper station. Niles and Mark.
Go. How many cards does he have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, actually.
But if that was George's rationalization, I think he's better off waiting to do it on his own upkeep. That way, if Joe does have a response that he wants to use, it forces him to commit the mana at a later time, but it's a marginal thing.
Delver, drawn by George. In they come for 2.
And Delver.
Joe seems to be okay with that. In quotes.
Yeah.
Draws. First play. Brainstorm main phase. 2 fetch lands in play.
Yeah.
This is a quasi-ancestral recall here.
And very good chance that he's got a bunch of garbage in his hand, too. He's kept his hand face down, so we don't know, but...
He wants to make it a surprise for you and me.
Sure. Or it's possible that he has his, like, Solifuse mimeoplasms of the world, and no one wants to go out on TV like that.
Puts back his 2 cards. Flooded Strand sitting on the sidelines here, waiting to jump into the game.
And Joe still actually hasn't cast like a proactive spell
Yeah.
the whole match.
He
There's
has
been vials and cantrips and stifles.
Stifle essentially a wasteland. Vial essentially a Llanowar elf.
Yeah.
And says go. This is dangerous right now. This moment. Delver says he's like, it's a good card. I got a good one. I'm not going to show you now, but it's good. In for one here, changing his Grim Lavamancers into shocks.
Yep, he is signaling that he's feeling like Joe's in range.
And we see perhaps the signal
plow.
towards the plow. This actually here, Swords to Plowshares, a card that he would have loved to have seen much earlier in the game. Even if it's only to a turn from those 1/1s,
It's a
it
lot
adds
of
up.
time.
Looks like he's just going to take it. Swords to Plowshares, a Grim Lavamancers at end of turn. I think he might be about to go for it. I think Joe might be setting up his attempt to win.
Yep. I mean, it's hard for him to go off over the top of the Lavamancers, so.
I wonder if Submerge is going to make an appearance, though, from George after he's all tapped out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, George's hand is like so loaded with awesome reactive cards. He has Force of Will and Pierce and Submerge and Bolt and his Lavamancer still up. So
Flooded Strand.
hard to imagine Joe has a hand that can go off on over the top of that.
Gets it. Savannah. One of the lesser used dual lands until recently, with Maverick making an appearance, not reintroducing, but reinvigorating the Savannah. Plow.
So now there's a question of, he is willing to do it. Is he willing to use his mana that way when this means that he does not have Pierce and Bolt to be able to play on his turn?
I'm not sure how many cards Joe has. He's been keeping them well hidden from us. So.
Yeah.
Two, three, not many.
This would be impressive to go off over the top of this.
Joe draws.
I mean, the Grand Abolisher would be a big starting point.
He had a little grimace there. That was not a happy look.
I mean, he's never not grimacing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is just a thing.
I think we're going to see Lord of Extinction. A boom? A boom! One of the smallest Lord of Extinctions I've ever seen. It's a mere 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.
I think you just submerge that dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can let him cast that one again.
things are looking bad for our hero,
Yeah, this is
Joe Lossett.
and the helplessness of his next draw step being that Lord of Extinction again.
He can change that by losing a life.
Right, but then we're already in pretty dangerous territory. It actually kills him, even if the Delver doesn't flip because he has Lightning Bolt. George has Lightning Bolt in his hand.
And here it comes. That turns off the Flooded Strands. And that locks... what's he going to do here? He's going to respond? Brainstorm in response?
Maybe he has a Pierce.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Days to guarantee Joe's death. And that's all she wrote.
True.
I'm really sad you guys didn't get to see the Mimeoplasm come out and play. But sometimes a simple deck with Delvers and Tarmogoyfs
Yep.
actually, it doesn't even have Delvers. It's the burn deck with Delvers and Snapcasters is all.